Hello, I'm Beth Schnabel. I work for Medina County Soil and Water Conservation District. Notice soil is part of our title, and we're going to have another experience in the woods, or in this case, we're right on an edge of a farm field, but we're on the edge. I'm picking a location where the soil has not been disturbed for this particular demonstration. We're going to learn about soil particles, the items the size of pieces of soil that you can find in the ground, particularly the topsoil. So what I have done is I have come out into the undisturbed, right on a tree line, and I have created a spot where I've removed the sod, where the roots are, and I've kind of made loose here a nice amount of soil. Now, if I take this in my hand, you can feel, of course I got heavy gloves on, so I'm going to remove my glove for this one. And you can feel, different things in the soil. It feels a little moist. It feels kind of gritty. And yet if I squeeze it, my thumb becomes wet. In fact, I can see my thumbprint right there. So there must be moisture and water in here. And when I press it really hard with my hand, it kind of holds together in a ribbon. So what in the world is happening in the soil to make these particular characteristics? Well, I've got a demonstration for you. You need to get a mason jar, a quart jar of any kind. It doesn't have to be a canning jar, but if you've got one. The most important thing is to make sure you got the right size. It's a little bigger or a little smaller, that's okay. But make sure you've got a lid that fits and is good and tight, because it's going to need to be. You go out, as I have done. I have dug an area, I've loosened up a soil, and I'm going to take 1 cup. I'm going to try to remove any roots or anything like that. It may be a little hard to do that, but I'm going to place that into the jar. Okay, I lost a little, so I'm going to put a little bit more in. There, we got it. And then make sure that you bring water with you, because this is part of the demonstration. I know there's different things in the soil. I can feel them, but I want to separate them so I can study them individually. So this particular demonstration is going to separate the different soil particles so that we can study them better. So into the jar. There you go. And make sure you've got some space at the top, because we're going to be shaking this very, very hard. All right. And start shaking. You can do a little dance as you're shaking if you want to. And if your whole classmates are all lined up shaking, I bet it's going to be very comical to take a look. I didn't get my jar lid on tight enough, so I feel a little moisture running down the side, but I'm not losing much. The main thing is to shake it until you see everything just kind of floating around in the water. And if that happens, then you've probably taken that sample of soil and you probably are separating now all the different particles. Then you just set it down. If you have a table that you can take out into the field, that's probably even better. And you will start noticing within a few minutes that there seems to be something falling down and settling at the bottom of the jar. Now, why it's settling is that particular particle is heavier, and it's able to now separate itself through the mixture and settle at the bottom. And I'll tell you what its name is. That particle is called sand. Yeah, I didn't know, but I think when I felt that grittiness, that was sand that I was feeling. So right away you can see the sand. In fact, it looks a little lighter. But there's still a lot going on up here. So to be very honest, we'd have to stand out here all night long and come back tomorrow in order to see that. So as your teacher probably came out to this spot yesterday and probably took a jar and did the similar activity, And I've got it sitting right over here. Take my glove off. There you can see the sand right here at the bottom, a layer. Above it is silt. That's another name of the particle. And if you notice up here, it's not clear yet. They're still the smallest of soil particles called clay that are still floating in the water. It may take them a week before they settle down. But if you have a good sample, you should see 3 layers: sand, silt, and then clay finally. We are seeing clay. It's still just kind of hanging out in the water. So leave this jar, the one that you did today and the one your teacher did yesterday, leave it in your class windows, let it sit, and eventually you will see the 3 layers. Now if you're in some areas where there's kind of more rocks, your soil layer is not real deep, you may end up getting some gravel or bits of stone, and that would be a 4th layer, which they call parent material. So I want to show you some different things. Your teacher will have this to show. This is what we just did. It's called a dirt shake. Now, it's not a chocolate shake, but it's a dirt shake. And you just did it. So what we see in this illustration is we see a little organic floating on top. Let me take a look here. Yeah, look at that. There it is. Little bits of leaves, rocks, maybe even a dead bug. But that's part of soil. Whoop, it went over. Then you see what they call the suspended clay, which we had in our sample, then the silt, and finally the sand. And when you look at the size here at the bottom, you can see that sand particle is huge compared to the silt. And then look at that spot there. That's the clay. So you can see the difference between these 3 soil particles and understand why sand, big old sand, gold, goes down to the bottom pretty quick. Silt kind of hangs out for a little while and then it settles. But clay, it just drifts through that water for days, sometimes at a time. So that's the soil particles, but we're missing out on other things. Oh, this is what I was doing right at the beginning, where I had the sample between my fingers and I was feeling, I could feel the moisture, I could feel gritty. I know it's sand now. And I could also feel kind of a slickness where it felt smooth. And that would have been the silt that I was feeling that was mixing with the water. So what else beside particles? Well, what else is in soil is very important. We must have water, we must have air, we must have small rocks, sand, silt, clay, and of course we must have then the organic. And on the other demonstration that I have done, and your teacher may have even shown it to you already, we looked into that soil and we know that there are a lot of organisms that are in the soil that are helping to decay and decompose the minerals and everything. Now, they're not all equal in there. In fact, this is kind of interesting. If I were to separate these 4 items that are in soil and put them into a pie chart, this is what it would actually look like. The biggest part of soil is actually the minerals, the rocks, the sand, the clay, the silt. 45%, almost half of soil is the minerals, very important. Then if I look at this side of the chart over here, 1/4, if someone gave me 1/4 of my favorite pie, I would be a very happy person. But 1/4 of soil is water, 1/4 of soil is air, so 25%, 25%. And just think about that. This is the food that the animals that live in the soil need. This is the water they need to absorb in their drink, basically, or absorb through their skin. And this is the air because they're living critters, just like us, and we need air and water and food in order to survive. And only 5%, that little wedge right there, is actually our living organic. It could also be dead organic, but your plants and animals that are part of the soil. All very, very important to make a good soil. If you have any questions or need more information about soil and water, please call our office at 330-722-9322. If you would like copies of these charts, please call our office or look in the descriptions